All right, we're ready.
All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our At Capacity session. I'm glad you are able to pop in and get a seat. I'm looking forward to talking with all of you today, and we'll be doing a short presentation, but hopefully spend most of our time working on generating ideas about what we can do as far as research on the student perspective of learning. And we'll jump right in. So I'm Penny Ralston-Berg. I'm an instructional designer with Penn State World Campus. I'm also the QM coordinator for Penn State. Today's session, Student Perspective 2.0, where do we go from here, is all about what students think, what students may need in their online learning experience, and how can we as researchers find out more about that. So like I mentioned, we'll be crowdsourcing a Google Doc, and I can give you that link one more time, just in case someone came in late. And so you can jump over there, you can follow along. I'll be making some references to different research topics as I go through the presentation portion, and those are under the targeted references in the document. If you're wanting to link to or see what I'm referring to, all of the references are listed in there. And we'll be doing some interactive exercises there later, so we'll be using the document a lot. So before we talk about the future, right, and also to help frame our conversation today, what I wanted to do first was review a few different types or perspectives or kind of lenses that research in higher ed and distance ed and online learning. And so related to quality and student success, what kinds of research have been done that we can learn from and build on? So first, let's look at the institutional perspective. And what we have here is the standard kind of conversion, retention, completion, moving students from application to a completed course. And there's also a body of work related to satisfaction and how it links to performance, and how attitude links to performance. This is the more institutional view of success. And so what I'd like to start off with in the chat, just a quick question. If we're considering the student point of view, what's different? Okay, so if you can add in the chat, what would you consider to be the student definition of success? And I'll give you a minute to think about that compared to the institutional perspective. Right, getting an A. What do I need to do to get an A? Graduation is important, completion is important, a passing grade. Yeah, if we can also think about maybe an extreme example, if a student needs to learn a specific set of skills, right? I saw marketable skill go by in the chat there. If they need to learn a marketable skill, then maybe they sign up for a class, and 5 weeks into the class, they've learned what they need to learn, and then they drop the class. And they see that as a complete success. They have the knowledge and skills they need, and it's a bonus because it was a shorter time frame than they expected. So for them, total success. And from the institution point of view, though, in terms of retention and completion, a failure. So really, the theme there is to, as we do research, consider student perspectives and student needs. There are a lot of good mentions in the chat: being able to get a job, being able to apply it in the real world, different opportunities. So there are lots of lots of good perspective in the chat there. Thank you. So another part of research especially in the late 90s, early 2000s, there were many comparison studies asking which is better, online versus face-to-face, right? Give me a shout out in the chat if you remember those kind of studies going on all over the place. From a student point of view, this isn't really a great question because with work and family and other obligations, some students who were taking online courses really didn't have a choice. And Jim mentioned, yes, this is still going on, unfortunately. Yeah, so it was not a great question from the student point of view. Online and distance ed were the only options they had given their situation. And so how it turned out was no significant difference. There are really no significant differences, only based on the modality, right? It's about design and strategy and teaching. And so for those of you who are still seeing this pop up, there are two databases that you can use. Oregon State University has the Online Learning Efficacy Research Database, where they track different studies that measure the effectiveness of online learning, and then also the National Research Center for Distance Education and Technological Advancements, DETA. They have a database also, and you can actually submit articles to contribute to that database. So if you're looking for resources to make your case, these are two good sources. Oh yeah, and Gail says, what about the COVID backlash for remote learning? Yeah, well, we have a slide for that later. So you're right in line. And we're still hearing students with the perspective that face-to-face is better, but they're not happy about being forced to do online learning, right? That's true. So if we move into the early 2000s to the 0506, first rubric from Quality Matters, they came out with their first rubric based through their FIPSI grant. They came out with the first rubric. And so there was a question at the time, a question that I had in my mind at the time was, you know, these look great. And from a design perspective, I agreed with everything that was in the rubric, but I was curious about, do students agree with this, right? Do students agree that these indicators of quality as defined by Quality Matters are important? And the short answer was yes, they do. They do. Although the QM items were important, there was some variation in the rating based on some different demographic groups, and students who had more experience taking online classes also rated QM items in a different way. And so if you're interested in learning more about that, the links are in the Google Doc that I shared. The important theme here is that there was a tendency to think of online learners as all one group of people. And so they do, you know, they may have preferences at the beginning that change over time. They may think that things are important when they're a novice online learner and change that opinion when they become more experienced online learners. So the idea is that we really can't think of online learners as one big group of people, which I'm sure you're all aware of. We're here in a research environment, so I'm sure that you're all thinking about students in that way. So another body of work was around engagement, right? So how how can we make courses more engaging? How can we add more interaction? How can we get students to collaborate with each other? So give me a shout out in the chat if you remember this kind of surge of engagement. And we're still kind of feeling that today. So Jim's absolutely. So from a student point of view and from QM, the research that QM's done, alignment is really key. So from a student point of view, the question is, why am I doing this? Right? Because if I don't know why I'm doing it and I don't see how it fits together, it feels like busy work, and busy work is not good because I'm a very busy person. I don't have extra time to spend. So, okay. So from a student point of view, alignment's important, but also from the instructor's point of view, right? Because when you add more interaction or more discussion or more engagement, whatever you're calling it, when you're adding more activity, there's more to manage, right? And there's more time to spend on maintaining it and managing it. So alignment also helps target the time and effort of the instructor or the course author to where it is most needed. So again, the theme there is that alignment is really key no matter what you're trying to do in the course. Okay. So before we get into that, why don't we just pause and take a few comments. I can see some going by in the chat, but really from a student point of view, what do you think it means to have an engaging course? How would you define what an engaging course is, but from the student point of view? Yeah, it's meaningful, which gets to the alignment, meets a student need, immediately relevant. Okay, somebody asked to say a little more about alignment. So for those of you who aren't familiar with Quality Matters and how it's structured, the alignment refers to the course having some measurable course level and module level learning objectives. And then throughout the course, the materials, the activities, the assessments, the tools that are used in the course are all lined up with helping students achieve those objectives. So that's what we mean by alignment. For example, if maybe someone sees a new technology at a conference and says, hey, I'm gonna put this new technology in all my courses, but not really considering how it fits with the goals of the course and the desired outcomes of the course, then it could be this extra kind of distraction instead of being in line with one of the desired goals or outcomes to helping students reach them. So I hope that helps explain what alignment. Yep, outcomes versus objectives, yes. Okay. Okay, so another aspect of this is student-centered learning, and that can mean many things, right? But the ones that I want to focus on are the idea that there are certain types of students who have specific preferences or work habits. Some examples are learning styles, right? So at one time, it was popular to determine if you were a visual or an auditory or a kinesthetic learner. Yeah, and I see in the chat learning styles are not evidence-based, right? They're there were other things like multitasking. Younger students are somehow better at multitasking or somehow used to doing more than one thing at a time, or the idea of millennials and game-based learning. So we need to have more game-based learning because the millennials coming in, they're used to playing games and we need to do that. And so although the intention is good, you know, we we care about students and we want to help them learn in the best way possible. All of these items on the left here have been disproven by neuroscience. Yet they still kind of exist and are still making the rounds even today. So Clark Quinn has a book about this that's listed in the Google Doc, and I've also included a few other references in there. Wired had a really good article about everything you need to know about learning styles in 2 minutes. That's a great resource if you kind of need to talk to someone about it. That's a great resource for that. So looking at the other side of it, considering accessibility, inclusivity, and UDL, which is the Universal Design for Learning, what we really need to do from the student point of view is to create accessible courses that really imply these universal design principles and are inclusive of all students. So if we stop thinking of categories of students and start thinking of all students, and I say start, which I should correct myself because I think a lot of us are already thinking in that direction anyway. But at one point in time, learning styles was really, really a big thing. So yeah, so there are some questions here. How much variety of materials should be in an online class? Full-time instructor, pre-recorded lectures, right? So that's a good example of how you may have pre-recorded lectures, but could you also have the transcript and the captions? Could you break the lecture into parts to make it more consumable? So thinking about it in different ways of delivering the same information. So, okay. So I also wanted to share this. Well, before we get into that, let's explore this. We have a little bit of time. So in the chat, let me just ask you, what does it mean to have an inclusive course from a student's point of view? What does inclusive mean? In general, it means we're thinking about all students. Yeah, of course, that makes you feel welcome, right? There's a lot of a feeling of community. That there are not barriers built into the course to keep you from success. Student perceives to be included. Space for authenticity and connection. Yeah, those are all great examples. Yeah. Does not exclude me if I'm restricted by technology or bandwidth. We have options that every student could participate. Yeah, those are all great. Thank you. So yeah, so I also just wanted to mention if you're interested in knowing more about today's students, the demographic of today's students, just in higher ed in general or in distance learning, there are 2 links in the Google Doc under the Students Today heading. And this is just one example. Higher Learning Advocates does a lot of research about who are today's students and who's taking these classes. So you can definitely check out those websites to get more information. So on this screen just here, adult learners used to be a very small proportion of students, but there are so many options now that adult learners are actually 37, right? 37% of students are adult learners, meaning that they're 25 or older. So the younger demographic of college age student who goes to campus isn't necessarily as large as it used to be. So we have a wide variety of students. That, again, that's just one example. Yes, Catherine, I believe this research is just the US. That's a great question, because I would love to see what it is for other countries too. I'm sure that Eden does some research for European distance ed, but yeah, I would be very curious about that. So I mentioned that. And then, okay, so then we arrive to the current day, right? So we're still in the middle of this pandemic. We've been dealing with it for the last year. And in a way, we've come full circle, right? Because as it was mentioned in the chat earlier, we're making comparisons again, face-to-face versus remote versus online. And then, especially in my community of instructional designers, thinking about or trying to make sure that people don't equate remote with online, because what we do for online is a purposeful designed experience, not an emergency reaction, right? So everybody was trying to design the best they could and give the students the best experience they could with the resources they had and the time constraints, but being careful of how we're talking about things and what we're labeling things. So basic needs also are important, right? Way back when we were talking about, what do the students really need? Clear expectations, transparent technology, alignment, knowing what's expected of them. What do they need to do to get an A? How do they do that? How do they use the LMS? All of those basic needs came back. And then we also saw this time magnify the challenges, right, of diversity, equity, how students are assessed, the feelings that they can have from being assessed at a distance. And so I want to open it up in the chat again. From a student point of view, just give me some examples of the challenges that students had. Yeah, there was definitely access, right? Not access in terms of bandwidth and technology. Yeah, life and learning kind of taking place at the same time. Lack of consistency in course design. Okay, there's learning and a lack of underlying security. Instructors were stretched very thin and didn't know how to help students, right? And you also have where students who were housing insecure or food insecure or other things that they were getting on the campus if they're on their own, or possibly homeless when they're off campus, being able to survive that situation. Challenges beyond what instructors were able to help with. I think that's very important because there's so many challenges. Okay, now let's flip to the other side. From a student point of view, do you see any opportunities that revealed themselves? I was reading some articles the other day about how some students with autism were doing much better at home in an online situation. So I'm just wondering if the folks here as a community had any. Okay, I'll look for the article and post it into the resources when we're done. Oh, and introverted students. Yep. Gaining confidence in online and tech. Yeah, thank you. So that was a bit of a time machine visit, right? So now the question is, where do we go from here? So if you're not in the Google Doc already, I will add it to the chat again one last time. So in place of breakout rooms, right? So we don't put everybody in the spot and force you to participate. If you could jump over to the Google Doc, and I can actually, let me stop sharing this and I will start sharing our document. Okay, so if you look at the side menu over here, you'll see 3 questions. And what I'd like to do is use some of our time to kind of collect our thoughts. So if you click on that, ideas for the future, please feel free to start adding your thoughts about, as researchers in online learning, what should we be looking at? What should we be thinking about right now? The most important question, I think, is what do we need to know about the students to help them succeed? So if you can enter your thoughts there, and then also the other option is to continue adding thoughts in the chat. Okay, the chat, yep. You can continue adding your thoughts in the chat. And then also, if anyone has any comments, questions, or just a general thought that you want to share, feel free to raise your hand or open your mic, and we can share that way too. I can also play some music to write by if that helps. Okay, so someone's asking, can you please share the completed version of the Google Doc? I'll actually leave this open. So if you have the link, if you keep the link, you'll be able to jump back in. Oh, Garen, thank you for the recommendation for another learning styles article. I'm adding that. So I wanna jump in. We're giving everybody a few minutes to get some ideas down. So if we can just go in and recap. So where do we go from here? What's next? And so there's some suggestions of looking at gaps. We need to know how students navigate through the course. So user experience design and getting more in that direction, like folding that into our instructional design. Technologies that should continue. Does student success correlate with instructor tech competency? That's an interesting question. Is there, how can we prepare for the next generation of students? How will they be different from the current generation? And then the other side of that coin, which kind of gets back to the millennials issue, is if we're considering generations, what aspects of design or quality are universal across generations. So for example, if good design is good design, then does that apply to all groups no matter what? Or are there aspects of design that are universal, like alignment? And then someone posted they're curious about how we can connect the feedback our students provide in campus surveys and other means. What are the pain points? Yeah, so if the feedback for courses can be somehow shared with people who are responsible for supporting the design and development of courses or revision of courses, how can the student data that's collected inform a revision of a course? Okay, and then Siobhan's asking, is there any research that provides a list of free or low-cost resources that students find helpful? Oh, and Yolanda shares, there should be a full-time faculty lead in charge of creating a master show. Yep. So if you're talking about master course shells, the New Mexico State University has a great example of that. I can get the link. I'll add it. I'll add it to the resources. Okay, so there's some other comments about sharing the rubric and having students review the course. So how can we get more student input into the design of the courses? That's an interesting question. There's a great list here of how we can help. A great list. That's a great list of how people can help. So then in terms of what do we need to know to help students succeed, looking at what's stopping them from being successful, what technologies they have access to, reflecting on the COVID experience. That was interesting. How to study metacognitive research. Okay. All right. So we have just about 10 minutes left in the session. Are there any other thoughts or questions or just comments on today? I'm interested maybe in hearing from some of you about what direction do you think your research is going to take in the next few years? I'm getting that New Mexico link for you right now. So if you're looking to build a course shell that's based on the QM rubric, so if you build the shell and use this course developer's guide, I always give a shout out to this, and usually every session I do, it's like all roads lead to a good guide. So what they've done is they've developed a course development tool for faculty. If they develop the courses using the resource, then they're meeting several of the quality matters standards just from having used the course developers guide, and then they can work on other things later. So it lets people really get a good firm start. It's integrated with their faculty development. It's a great example. Okay. Catherine's saying she'd like to do more research on inclusivity and accessibility. Me too. Individual disabilities. Oh, Madalena asks if the session is recorded. Yes, the session's recorded, and I'll leave this Google Doc open so you can all get back to it later. And there's another comment, would like to learn more about how centers for teaching and learning can support faculty development. Yeah. Okay, so like I said, the Google Doc is open. Continue to work, continue to go back to that if you'd like to pull resources from it. Also feel free to add references, right? If you have some good links that will help inform people about different aspects that are listed there, please feel free to add resources. We really want this to be a living document. And in the interest of back-to-back sessions all afternoon, I don't feel like we have to stay right up until the end time, right? If you'd like to get a quick break before the next session starts up, or if you have one you've got your eye on and you just want to get a seat, that's great. So thank you all for coming today. I know that you had your choice of sessions, and I really appreciate you coming, and also the active participation that we had in the chat and in the Google Doc. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you all being part of the session today. Thank you. And if you want to tweet about the session, my Twitter account is @PennyMoved.